All right, everybody, welcome back to another video. As promised, we're back midweek with a Q&A video this time. I put a question prompt up on my story on Instagram and we got lots of responses. So I figured it's a good way for y'all to get to know me through your questions. So naturally there's some basketball questions, but then obviously we got some non-basketball questions as well as some inappropriate questions that can't be asked. So be better, everybody. Okay, I think the first question that I want to touch on is from Walker, and he asks, what year in high school was your biggest step forward and what helped you with that step? I think for me, from year to year, I definitely felt improvements and I felt myself making strides, but I think my biggest one was from my sophomore to my junior year. I would credit that to just learning how to shoot. It wasn't that I couldn't shoot before. Like, I had Division I offers at that point in my life. Up until that point, it just hadn't clicked. I shot threes, but I just wasn't efficient. Felt like there was a disconnect between my brain and my body a little bit. There was actually a point during my freshman year where I was ready to just scrap my whole shot and start from scratch. And there was a kid from our area. His dad recruited us to Northern Iowa, plays for the Bucks now, AJ Green. And if you haven't seen AJ shoot, go watch, because it just shows you that there's not one single right way to shoot the basketball. And he would shoot the ball way overhead. I was ready at that point in time to make a complete change and scrap my jump shot. I was gonna try to maybe raise my set point and shoot a two-part shot. I'm glad I didn't, because ultimately I spent a lot of time during my younger years form shooting in front of the mirror and just getting a feel for what I thought looked like a good shot. And that was always my goal growing up. And I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I wanted a jump shot that looked good before maybe even it felt good, because I think that through external reassurance from people telling me oh, your shot looks really good, I would then get that confidence. And honestly, it's kind of worked that way. Like, now I got a shot that people are like, okay, I want to shoot like you, or what did you do to get your form, stuff like that. And so I don't necessarily think that form matters when it comes to putting a ball in the basket, but it definitely put my mind at ease. And so the thing that clicked for me going into my junior year was just I'm gonna feel the same as I feel when I shoot in the mirror. It was just a thought that I had in my mind, and it was like this coming to Jesus moment. It probably shouldn't have been, because now when I talk about it, it doesn't feel like that big of a thought. But at that point in time, there was just a disconnect between my brain and what I was actually doing on the court. From that point on, I shot the ball better. I made 100 threes my junior year at a pretty good clip. I think I shot 38%, and then my senior year, I shot over 40. The next question is, what was your journey to become a shooter? So obviously I just talked about kind of the origin of my journey to shoot the ball, but I think that when I really took another step, my next big step probably came 4 years later, and that was my junior year in college. I would say after that junior year. So I shot 30% my junior year. I hadn't shot great in my college career after that point, not from my standard at least. It was I shot, I think, 32% my freshman year, which obviously you're going through this big change, you're playing at a higher level. And then I shot 37 my sophomore year, but then my junior year, I felt like I couldn't throw a rock in the ocean, and I knew that something had to change. And so I had always been this guy, and I've documented on my vlog before, I'd always been the guy to focus on routine and to feel like, okay, if I do this, this, and this, then I'll make shots. My favorite player growing up was Kobe, and I think that part of the reason I became so routine oriented is because of that. Just reading and watching videos about Kobe. It's like this legend and this lore that okay, Kobe's obviously this crazy hard worker, and he stuck to his routine for his whole career, and it worked for him. And so for that, I'm thankful, because I don't know if I would have the same work ethic if I wasn't exposed to what he was doing at a young age. I think it took me failing at that point in time while still going through this routine to realize okay, maybe this isn't the best thing, because I think in a way, feeling so reliant on routine and structure, I think almost made me a prisoner to my own mind in a sense, where I was if I didn't do what I felt like I needed to, I was just okay, I'm not gonna shoot the ball well. Even when I did do it, it was I still wasn't shooting the ball well, you know? So I think that at that point in time, I learned that I'm not entitled to anything because of the work I put in before. You know, at the end of the day, you have to learn to perform. And I think that that's something that my friend Mitch, Hoopin' Mitch on Instagram, I've shouted him out before. I'll do it again to anyone that'll listen. He completely changed the trajectory of my career. I strongly believe that. And he's just a smart dude, man. Psychology background, and has all the technical knowledge to back up what I already kind of felt. And he just helped expose me to more, push me in the right direction. And I feel like since then I've been on a journey to be as adaptable as possible. I'm thankful for him, because since I guess last year and heading into this year even, that's been my ultimate goal, is to just be adaptable. And so that's when we touched, there were more questions about barefoot shooting. When did it originate? stuff like that. And I think to answer kind of all those questions in one started at that point in time. If I'm being completely honest, I don't know all of the science behind barefoot shooting. I just know that I go way more off feel now than I did before. And I think there's just power and kind of feeling every part of your environment, and shoes are obviously a barrier between you and the gym. The other thing I've realized about shooting, you've never arrived or made it as a shooter. You know, like the journey's never complete. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing. Some days you're gonna feel good, some days you're gonna feel bad. You're gonna go through really hot streaks and you're gonna go through shooting slumps too. I think that is what I would tell younger players. You're never gonna reach a point in your life where you're like, okay, I've made it as a shooter. You'll definitely reach a point where you're like, okay, I'm a way better shooter than I used to be. I think no matter the level you get to, you can always get better. And I think the sooner you come to peace with that, the better off you'll be. It's a long-winded answer, but ultimately that's what my journey has looked like. And I know I've got a long way to go too. So good question. Moving into college a little bit, we've got a question that says, what is your favorite opposing stadium you've ever played at? And I will answer 2 different stadiums, and they probably won't surprise people. My first one was my junior year. We played at North Carolina, and I didn't even play well that game. It was a close game, but I remember pre-game. So this was the year after Roy Williams retired. If you don't know who Roy Williams is, Google him, legendary North Carolina coach. But this is the year after he retired. I remember at tip. So first of all, the Dean's Dome seats 24,000 people. It's loud in there. It's like, I feel like it's as close to an NBA experience as you can get, which makes sense because the brand we're talking about. But it felt like it was kind of about everything but basketball, especially before tip. Music playing and people dancing. And I remember they play Swag Surf right before tip, and I look over and Roy Williams is sitting front row with his wife, swag surfing with the rest of the 24,000 people. And I was like, wow, this is pretty sick, actually. So that was a pretty cool moment because obviously you grow up, you're watching those North Carolina teams compete for national championships, and then the year that I play them, their legendary head coach is front row doing the swag surf. So that was not on my bingo card, but it was pretty cool. Second, I would say, is Duke, and that probably comes as no surprise to anyone. The thing that people don't know about Duke, or most people don't know about Duke, is their whole student section prints off like a scouting report for the opposing players, and they have all the dirt on those players. So I don't know, some of the stuff is pretty harsh. Some of it's probably as simple as a Google search, or they weed through your Instagram and Twitter, but they didn't have any crazy dirt on me. I remember they put, he has a 44-inch vert, but he can't jump off the bench. So some of the trash talking was really weak. Whoever came up with that line has to, I don't know, check themselves a little bit, because that was poor. That was really poor. But I would say that was a fun one too, especially because I played really well, and I had 15, and I had a big dunk, got some cool picks. It's really all you can ask for when you go play at Duke. So no, that one was on the bucket list, and yeah, it didn't disappoint. I would say that the arena itself, though, y'all would probably be underwhelmed if you're expecting something crazy. I think it's more so everything that's happened in that arena and the fact that it's really, really small, intimate environment, but it gets rocking for sure. So those were 2 really cool places to play. The next question is, what do you miss most about BC? And I would say that would be, there's 2 things. I miss for sure the relationships. I think that anyone who leaves a place feels that, obviously to some extent. I'd say the hard thing for me when I was leaving is thinking about how many of my relationships flourished in year 2 as opposed to year 1. Coming to Utah, I wouldn't even have a chance for those relationships to flourish because I was only gonna be here for 1 year. That was a hard thing for me to come to terms with because there are probably so many good people here that if I stayed for a long time, and maybe I'll be in Salt Lake City, who knows what happens. But there are so many good people here that I would never meet, you know, because I'm only spending a year here. That was hard for me because I left those relationships behind in Boston. Obviously, I had lots of good things come from there. I had good friends. I met Sierra. You know, I found success on the basketball court. I got a good education. So those things I miss for sure. And I also miss the sweat equity that I had built up at BC. You know, like when people see you go through certain things. And for me, it was just like, I struggled my junior year shooting the ball, my first year there. And they didn't really lose belief in me. And they saw that there was a time when I was in pain every single day, playing through it and fighting through it, and I didn't miss practice, and I didn't miss games. Ultimately, I ended up getting hip surgery after the year, and when the pain didn't go away, I got checked further and was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And then I started vlogging, and people were able to kind of learn more about me and my journey. I think they really identified with what I'd been through and the perseverance, just the realness, the authenticity I was trying to show to the highest degree. So all of that stuff is not lost on me, you know, like leaving that behind. And people say what they want about leaving somewhere and chasing new experiences, but it's like that was not an easy thing for me to leave. It's still hard. I often think about like, oh, what could have been kind of thing. But I also know deep in my heart that I'm in the right spot for my last year. You know, the people that care in Boston still care, you know, like they care about me as a person and they're still following. I would just say that that sweat equity that I had built there though, obviously with the fan base, but also even with the coaches, earning trust over a span of 2 years, it's like one of those things you can't force, you know, and you only get through time. And there's lots of things that I miss about BC, but those are the main ones, and they have to do with the people there. BC or Utah in terms of facilities? And that's a tough one actually to answer because I think that both are really high level facilities. I would say that my first year at BC was not high level. We were going through a whole renovation. We lifted in like a 15 by 15 room with 4 squat racks and that was it. But we made do, shout out Proto. And then my second year there though, it was, I can't remember what, I think it was like a $50 million renovation. The gym was all glass, at least one side of it. And so the sun just shone through. The weight room was brand new, all natural lighting, nutrition facility, locker room, everything. So my second year there, it was definitely worth the wait. So that was pretty cool. And I'm just a big natural light guy anyway, so I do miss that about BC for sure. But Utah's facilities, I mean, they're right up there with everybody else. I think my favorite thing is we have access to the hot and cold tub whenever we want. So if you don't feel great, you can just go chill in those. At BC, we had to have a trainer with us. That's a positive. Otherwise, they're pretty comparable. Locker rooms, both top end. I will say we don't have to share our practice gym with the women at Utah, so that's good. It's just kind of our own space. At BC, we share with the women's team, which is fine, but obviously run into some scheduling conflicts. But if I had to give the slight edge, I might give it to BC because of the natural lighting. What Big 12 team am I most excited to play? This one for me is not a hard answer. The University of Cincinnati, at Cincinnati especially, just because I have so many relationships there. For those that don't know, I started my career at Cincinnati my first 2 years. Played for 2 head coaches. I just decided the fit wasn't right. I wasn't playing for a head coach who recruited me originally, so that was hard, but it doesn't take away from all my memories there. The fact that I felt super connected to the school, to the community, to the city. I really dove in head first, you know, to all my experiences, and I was ready to be there for all my years. Not how it ended up going, so it's cool to be able to go back and play a game there in my last year in college. You know, like I feel like that'll be a pretty full circle moment, and it's one that I'm looking forward to, so that'll be cool. We've got a really good non-basketball question, but this one is, what's the most random fact you know? And the first thing that came to my mind is, okay, I gotta preface a little first. When I was in elementary school, our school did this kind of like reading competition where you would chart how many minutes you read every month, and the winner at the end of the year got to get a free book at the book fair the next year. I grinded to read, and I never lied about how many minutes I read. But I would actually grind reading, and I wanted those books. I'm a big bang for my buck kind of guy too, so I'm always looking for the best deal, right? And so I remember that the 2 most expensive books that you could get were Ripley's Believe It or Not and Guinness Book of World Records. And I was a huge Guinness Book of World Records guy. They were just, I mean, who's not? You know, it's like the big book on the shelf, it's shiny, it's got all the colors, whatever. The one thing, I'm sure there's other things, the one thing that came to my mind first from those books is that Usain Bolt used to run about, I think his top speed was like 27 miles an hour. It had him matched up against all the animals that he would run faster than. And I remember that the animal that ran as fast as he did was a rhino. And they both ran about 27 miles an hour. My really random fun fact is that Usain Bolt is as fast as a rhino. Yeah, just do with that info what you will though. It'll probably come in handy at some point. So this is another non-basketball one. Shout out my man Jack. He asked, what is my favorite family Christmas tradition? I would say that my favorite, I don't actually have that many. Out of the ones that I do, we used to order Chinese food, Chinese takeout every 23rd of December. We've been doing it for as long as I can remember. When I tell people now, they're like, oh, what a great way to commemorate your time in China, because for those that don't know, I lived in China when I was in 5th grade for a year. But little did these people know that we were having Chinese food on Christmas well before I ever went to China. So I don't really understand why or know how that started. It was definitely a staple, and we might have to bring it back this year, honestly. Okay, I like this one. So it just says, a drill, concept, physical or mental aspect of the ball journey that gave you the biggest growth. And obviously I've talked about my journey to be adaptable. Another thing that I really want to emphasize, because I think it's important, people, especially the younger audience here, and hey, anyone really, the older audience too, it's never too late to start. The importance of talking to someone, a professional in this field who knows what they're doing. So for me, that was kind of vague. For me, I'm talking to, and I've been talking to for the past couple of years, a sports psychologist, therapist kind of, and I've talked to a couple different people. We've got a really good guy who works with our team this year. Whether or not you think you need help, it's not really about that. I think that it's more so like if we put so much time into the physical, like I've documented this before. I was getting up at 5 a.m. when I was in middle school and high school and going to the gym, and I was working out after school, I was lifting, I was conditioning, all of these things. When we put so much time into that and we don't take time to put work into our mental, it's almost a lost cause in a sense. And not completely, obviously, but when you get to this level, you realize how marginal the differences are between good players and really good and great college players and NBA players even. You realize that any advantage you can get helps. We talk about performance-wise, but I also have found value just in my everyday well-being. You know, I think that's an overlooked part too. And being able to talk to someone and admitting that you need help in a sense, I think that's the greatest sign of strength you could show, far more than trying to tough it out and not talk to anyone at all, you know? And I think that there's real humility in that. Just an untapped space for lots of people, and especially lots of male college athletes, I would say. And I'm here to be the first one to advocate for it. You know, I've reaped so many benefits up to this point in my life, and I know I'll continue to. But that was a game changer for me and led to a lot of growth and still is leading to growth. And if anyone wants to talk about that either further, I'm all ears, because I would have needed that at certain points in my career too, just to hear this message right here. So it just says, your student athlete career started before NIL and the transfer portal. Opinion about it now. So I'm going to touch on the transfer portal first. This was something that was not on my radar at all coming into college. I didn't have to deal with it as an incoming freshman, you know, and part of me feels for the high school kids now, because it is so hard to get recruited if you're a mid-level guy like I was. On the flip side, I think that the transfer portal has been really good for players. You know, like I've benefited from it twice. I never would have thought that I would have been anywhere other than Cincinnati when I started my career. I feel like there's a stigma on guys that transfer that I didn't necessarily think aligned with who I was, and just the fact that they're running from issues and problems and hard work kind of, and I just pride myself in getting through those times, you know, and so I never thought I was going to be the guy that transferred once, let alone twice. I think there are circumstances that come along that you can't control, and you have to take your own career into your own hands in a sense, you know, and I think that I did that as well as I could have, you know, and I think that each of my stops has given me exactly what I wanted and needed at that point in time. It doesn't mean that it was the easy decision or that it was easy all the time, but I think they were rewarding in their own ways, and ultimately it's led me back to playing with my brother. We get to finish up together, which is really cool. And then NIL, so NIL is only a good thing. That is my take on it. I think that we're in a bit of an unprecedented time because it's like the wild, wild west right now. BYU just gave their freshman that just committed $7 million, which I think is crazy, but good for him. But I do think there will be rules and regulations put into place. I think there probably should be, to make the playing field a little more even across the board. There's no doubt in my mind that it's a positive. I remember coming in my freshman year, we would get like a $400 stipend a month. At that point in time, I felt so rich. I remember that was more money than I really ever made in my life. It was more money than I really needed at that point in time too. You know, like I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't really have expenses, so I just saved my money. At the end of the year, I bought my Prius. She's still going strong. You've seen her in videos if you watched before. For about $3,000, but that was cool because obviously that was the first money I'd ever made, and then it's just progressed a little bit each year. Each of my stops has been a little different, you know, and I think that early days of NIL, it was hard to navigate because you didn't really know what you were getting into. And so I remember my first year, it wasn't even as much about the money, honestly, for the next 3 years. Didn't really make that much. Some years I didn't really make anything. I got cool experiences. Like I remember my sophomore year, I went on a helicopter ride. We got like free food. We got to tour like these really cool homes down in the river in Cincinnati, and had like a hot wing eating contest. So it was like, there were cool experiences that came from it that weren't even necessarily about the money. That was cool. That was an adjustment. But obviously now guys are making big bucks. It's just a different world we're living in. It feels more like the pros than it probably ever has. So that's why I think there need to be probably regulations and rules put into place to just make sure people are on an even playing field. But there's no doubt in my mind that players making money, especially with how much money there was being exchanged behind the scenes, is a good thing. I'll answer this one and then I'll go one more. From my boy Chris Vogt. Shout out to Chris, man. He's overseas hooping now. He says, close second to Cane's. And for those of you that don't know Chris, his favorite restaurant is Cane's. So mine is not. I'm gonna take this question as, what is your favorite restaurant? And my favorite restaurant, key to my heart, is anything Mexican food. More specifically, I'll take one back home in Chippewa Falls, Wisconsin, Cancun. You know a restaurant named Cancun is gonna have good food. If you're gonna name a Mexican restaurant, you might as well call it Cancun. Bottomless chips and salsa and the white creamy sauce.
Pause.
Both slap. On top of that, I would go other favorite restaurant is in Cincinnati. I will 100% be having it when we go back there to play this year, is Condado. And Condado is a pioneer and a trailblazer. And if they want to do an NIL deal, I will 100% be in because they introduced me to something I'd never had before. Cool Ranch Dorito shell wrapped in a soft shell. So you had 2 shells on it and it was just unlike anything I'd had before. I still remember the name of it, the Blue Dream, and I will 100% be having it again. So the CEO of Condado is watching this, they probably are. Just know I am down for NIL. Thank you. Okay, the last question that we're gonna go with is, what is your favorite moment at each of your 3 schools? So now I can get sentimental and think back. So obviously I talked about my first stop being Cincinnati. Going back this year, it's gonna be full circle. It was not always perfect, I will say that. There was lots of turmoil through those 2 years, and going through a coaching change at that point in time with COVID is hard, but there were really cool times too. I was a freshman in college, I was wide-eyed, you know, and I was kind of ready for anything to come. Any chance I got, I remember if I played 1 minute, I was thrilled. So I started the season hurt, and I missed the first 8 games, came back, carved out a role for myself, shooting the ball pretty well, playing pretty well. We started winning a little bit. I remember I had 19 to close the year at East Carolina. And so that was my career high until literally last year. And then we went on a run in the conference tournament and led the team in scoring in the conference semifinal against Wichita State. We were the 4 seed, they were the 1 seed, beat them, and then got Houston and got killed by Houston. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I never really sniffed the tournament because that game was almost over as soon as it started, but that was as close as I've been, you know, playing in a game on ESPN on Championship Sunday to go to the tournament. That was pretty cool. I say going to BC, team-wise, my favorite memory, when we beat Virginia, that everyone stormed the court, that was just electric. I hope that if you play college basketball, I hope you get to be a part of a court storming because it's pretty cool. I have 2 favorite memories from last year, individually. One would be the Miami game, my career high. I went off, I had 25, we won. Felt like a heavyweight fight, like there was just so much shot making going on in that game from everybody. And it was kind of packed in the arena too, so that was a really fun game. Having 25 against Miami, that was a high moment for me, especially after my struggles that I've talked about at BC and people seeing me kind of struggle the year before, get surgery, be diagnosed with the autoimmune disease, and then turn around and have like that moment. It was really cool and really rewarding. And then the other one would be Virginia in the conference quarterfinals, the conference tournament quarterfinals. I had a shot to almost win it. I sent it to overtime. It was just like one of those, I titled the vlog, if y'all want to go look, go look. I'll probably never watch it again. It's called The Moment in Time, and it was literally Kevin Durant versus the Bucks in 2021 or whatever, when he had his toe on the line, and it changed the outcome because my toe wasn't on the line, we win the game. Yeah, and the thing that makes it even harder for me is the very next night, Michael O'Connell hit the same exact shot to beat Virginia from the same spot, just a few inches back, and hit a 3. And I said, in alternate universe, I'm living Michael O'Connell's life because they went on a Final Four run too, and shout out to him, man. That was pretty cool. For me, it was pretty cool still, you know, to hit a shot that big in that moment. It could have been so much crazier if that shot was for game. I remember Coach McCray hugged me as I hit it, and I just kind of like Dame Lillard, the celebration. I didn't even react. I felt so cool. I thought I hit the game winner. But ultimately, we lost that game, so that's why the video is titled A Moment in Time, because it doesn't really matter. But for me, individually, that was a really cool moment. There are very few things in life that make you feel that sort of rush, and that's one of them, so that was pretty cool. And then this year, I don't know if I have a specific memory yet on the court. Obviously, the season just started. We're 8 games in. Don't have a signature win yet, so it's hard to pick from anything that's happened on the court. I will say that just being back with my brother and being able to play together for our last year, and my parents both making it out to different games so far has been really cool and rewarding. Thinking back on the last game we played together and not knowing it was our last in high school when our season was canceled because of COVID, getting to play together now, really cool, really rewarding, and yeah, just an experience that most people don't get to have with their twin brother. That's been really rewarding for me, and it's probably my best memory so far. It's just kind of like everyday life, being able to be together. Okay. On that note, I think that I'm gonna wrap this one up. I've been sitting, I don't even know how long I've been out here. It feels like a long time because my hands are cold. Hopefully you guys just enjoyed the mountain scenery here. I could have easily just done it in my room, but I didn't. I brought my camera out in public on a quiet place so I don't feel as awkward, and here I am filming for you, answering your questions. Like I said, hopefully this allowed y'all to get to know me a little better, and maybe we can have a more targeted Q&A at some point if it wants to be more focused on just basketball, what my journey to this point has been, or obviously each of my stops too I could talk more about. This one was just broad. Shout out to you guys for dropping questions. I didn't even know if I was gonna get questions. I've never really done that before, so thank you for asking questions. Yeah, we'll catch you on Saturday when we play Radford. But if you're still watching at this point, shout out to you, because it's really just been me talking, and that's pretty crazy that people actually care what I have to say however many minutes in we are. Shout out to you guys. It would be dope if you guys dropped a like, and I will beg for your like again. Please drop a like. Thank you. You can comment too if you want. I don't really know what you would say, but you know, just something like, oh Mason, we really love you, you're really handsome, you're good at basketball, like things along those lines. And yeah, that's all I got for you, so I'll leave you on that note. But that's gonna do it for today. We'll be back again Saturday when we host Radford. Peace. Now I'm just gonna leave. Wait, actually, no, I'm not. I forgot to say keep it real. What is wrong with me? Everyone, don't forget to keep it real. Peace.